Here is the story of 3 siblings who made it to the very top by always putting family first.
The Milo family started a business which became a $50 million empire.
But for some members of this glamorous group, beauty only goes skin deep.
This was a struggle for power, not just a family business, but within the family itself.
It's only a matter of time before bruised egos and betrayal lead to brutal revenge.
This person was shot twice in the back of the head.
Investigators had to consider whether or not there was a personal motive.
When you have that much money and you have that much power, what do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
They say blood is thicker than water. But sometimes, your deadliest enemies are your closest relatives. Bath Township, Ohio's answer to Beverly Hills. If you've made it in the Buckeye State, you're likely living in Bath.
A lot of very wealthy residents, a lot of very posh homes spread out over acres and acres so that nobody lives close to one another.
It's basically known as a good place to live, to raise your children, very attractive community for those who have money.
But deep pockets and high hedges can't protect you forever. Multi-millionaire siblings Fred, Dean, and Sophie have always been close. But tonight's a special night, and the Milo brothers are going stag. They're hosting a truly delicious bachelor party. Dean and Fred's good friend, Lonnie Curtis, is marrying into the family. And what better way to celebrate than with an outing to Bath Township's most stylishly decadent men's lounge. Joining the Milos can be a dicey proposition. Some members of this family have been known to get a bit cutthroat. The man who arranged this little soiree is the Milo family's resident godfather, Dean.
Dean's a man who could walk into a room and it becomes quiet. Dean was the kind of person who would take care of the family.
Over the past decade, he's built the family business into a nationwide behemoth.
It literally started out in a garage and later became a $50 million empire.
Success like that means Dean can shower his friends with extravagant gifts. And tonight, he has an extra special treat for his soon-to-be brother-in-law, Lonnie. You could say Dean is flamboyant to a fault. But no one's complaining when he's throwing money around.
Dean is very good and generous. He makes sure that they have all the money that they need.
Where Dean is respected and feared, younger brother Fred isn't quite so imposing.
Fred was the opposite of Dean. Very artsy. Dean was the star, and Freddie was just sort of the little brother.
After a lifetime of playing second fiddle, Fred takes whatever attention he can get.
I would say he does not have the out front attitude that Dean has. He doesn't really stand out, as someone who would be a leader.
Luckily, Forgotten Freds learned how to buy friends. Lucky Lonnie. This Milo Company employee is suave as they come and twice as motivated.
Lonnie's handsome. He's a slick salesman. It's evident his sights might be on climbing even higher within that family.
He actually really wanted to run the place. That was his ambition.
Lonnie may be getting his kicks tonight, but tomorrow he marries into the Milo family. One step closer to making all his dreams come true. The wedding day has finally arrived, and blushing bride Sophie Milo has spared no expense. The youngest Milo sibling has always spent lavishly on the finer things in life.
Sophie could spend her time going out and getting manicures and buying nice clothing and, being out on the town, that type of thing, because she has the money.
Money that makes her beauty all the more seductive.
Sophie is absolutely a knockout, and she's very used to this life of luxury. And as a consequence, she can have her pick of men.
No family photo is complete without Dean. They say Dean held off on his marriage until he could afford a woman who lived up to his sky-high expectations. His trophy wife was certainly worth the wait.
Maggie is a very attractive woman, as you would expect, because Dean is a pretty handsome guy. There's no doubt about it that she's a compliment to him.
Though she looks like a supermodel, Maggie is a prim and proper Christian with the temperament of a nun.
She's not outgoing, very quiet, very passive person. She was a housewife, and that was her role, and she played it well.
Seeing all the beautiful people together on this special day, it would seem the Milo family hasn't a care in the world. Who could know the wedding march would soon give way to a funeral hymn? As the reception winds down, Maggie's getting wound up. Husband Dean seems to have a wandering eye.
I'm certain that Maggie felt that she was in the background. She wasn't the dynamic sort of person that would get in there and make things move like some people do. And Dean had the type of charisma that women wanted to be part of.
Dean's late nights at the office and weekends away on business have long concerned his stay-at-home wife.
When you have that much money and you have that much power, what do they say? Absolute power can corrupt absolutely. That's something that Maggie has to worry about.
Sometimes the best weddings make for the nastiest hangovers. Later that night, Dean is catching up on work when he notices some disturbing irregularities. Someone has siphoned $300,000 out of the company's accounts.
The people that work for Dean said, "Did you authorize?" And he didn't know anything about it, and he said no.
Now he's hoping that this is some kind of mistake, but as he will soon find out, it isn't.
The question now, who in the Milo family has been wetting their beak in the company till? Coming up, when Dean learns the truth, heads will roll. The Milo wedding photos are full of smiling faces. But as the saying goes, count no man happy until he's dead. Dean, CEO of the Milo Empire, calls a family meeting after finding $300,000 missing from company accounts. Other than Dean, only 2 people are authorized to make withdrawals like this: Dean's sister and brother, Sophie and Fred.
Sophie and Fred were vice presidents of the company. They had a share of the millions that were coming in.
To Dean's utter disbelief, his 2 siblings admit they transferred out the money.
Fred and Sophie felt that they weren't getting enough money, so they wrote out a check for $300,000 to them.
It's all an outrageous play to get Big Brother Dean's attention.
What was happening between these siblings wasn't about money. This was a struggle for power, not just a family business, but within the family itself.
Sophie says she and Fred are tired of Dean's overbearance. Even new brother-in-law Lonnie complains about his tyrannical tendencies.
Dean creates jealousy in his own family. This is a family-owned business. The family wants to be more deeply involved in this business.
Instead, Big Brother makes his siblings an offer they can't refuse. Unless Sophie and Fred relinquish all control of the company, Dean will walk away from the business.
I think if you know where your bread is buttered, you certainly don't want to get rid of the butter. And Dean Milo was the bread and the butter.
Who'd guess Dean's gutsy maneuver would soon be eclipsed by the ultimate power play? Fred and Sophie are forced to sign over all control of the business.
Dean didn't mind sharing the profits, but Dean at that particular time sent them home and said, fine, you'll get your checks in the mail.
That has got to be demeaning to anybody and certainly cause interpersonal strife.
I think at that particular moment, they all set out a pattern of, we don't like what's happening to us. We may do something about it.
In the midst of all this family friction, The only place you'll see the Milos together is at church. They're barely on speaking terms, but tongues are wagging about good old Dean.
Rumors begin to swirl, not only of Dean's infidelity with women, but perhaps with men. Now, Maggie, being this devout, virtuous Christian woman, would have a problem with that. That would be very upsetting to her. It's one thing if Dean is cheating with a female, but to be cheating with a male, that brings it to a whole new level.
She may have put some credence in that because there's a lot of story going on that maybe their love life was no longer as connected the way it used to be.
It finally dawns on Dean the time has come for some damage control. He offers to take Maggie on a trip, away from all the infighting and innuendo. But he'll soon find out there are some problems you can't run away from. Dean and Maggie fly south for a romantic vacation on the sunny coast.
Dean basically says, hey, Maggie, let's hit the reset button on our marriage, go to our vacation home in Florida, and get away from it all.
Hold on 2 seconds.
But their holiday will be very short-lived.
Yeah, this is Dean.
And while they're there on that vacation, Dean receives a phone call saying, come on back.
Why all of a sudden does he have to leave? She has to be suspicious that something's wrong.
Dean takes off, and Maggie stays behind in the hot Florida sun. The next day back in Ohio, ever-punctual Dean is conspicuously late to the office.
Everybody got concerned of where's Dean at because he should have been at work a long time ago.
A friend is dispatched to Dean's house to make sure the boss is okay.
She sees Dean Milo's car in the driveway and figures, what is he doing home?
There's no answer at the door. She thinks this is peculiar.
She had a spare key, and when she went there, she used the key to get inside that residence.
What the poor woman finds inside is something she'll never forget.
She finds a body. Now it's covered with a pillow, so she's not sure who this is.
She didn't believe it was Dean, and she was totally shocked.
Bath Township homicide investigators get to work. Unaware, a network of conspirators is already scattering in the wind.
Detectives quickly see this is not going to be an easy case. It's very unusual, and it's going to be very difficult to solve.
Up next, a shocking murder, a pile of dirty secrets, and a community completely upended. What in the world to make of murdered multimillionaire Dean Milo?
When I first got to the scene, I noticed a male laying on the floor, face down, a pillow laying on top of him. And we saw that he had his underwear on backwards.
The first of several odd details to give detectives pause.
Is this some sort of sex thing? Or did he perhaps just hurriedly throw on his boxer shorts?
Stranger still is the throw pillow resting on the dead man's head.
This pillow looked like a cushion of some sort, from maybe a couch or a piece of furniture.
And it's littered with tiny tufts of cotton gauze.
We saw one hole through the pillow. We saw that there was cotton all over it.
Detectives quickly see it's not cotton from the sofa cushion. Where did it come from?
They couldn't figure out at first, well, what happened here? Why would this be around his head?
While the bits of cotton are puzzling, cause of death is clear as day.
It appears that he's been shot twice, once in the back of the skull and once in the back of the neck.
So that, right away, this was a very mysterious scene, and we really don't know what happened here.
As evidence is documented and bagged, detectives are perplexed by the expensive trinkets left behind. First and foremost, Dean's gold watch and bracelet.
It was obvious that whoever did this did not rob him and wasn't looking for any jewelry.
If it's not a robbery, what's the real motive here?
Seems Dean was the target of a cold and calculated murder. But who's behind it? The entryway shows clear signs of a struggle. And in the midst of all this bloody mess, one last intriguing clue.
We saw a packet laying off to one side.
And they figured it really wasn't that unusual for a CEO of Dean's caliber to get a packet at that late hour, because runners would deliver these packages 24/7, basically.
Detectives tear open the messenger's envelope, but find it's empty. Likely just a prop. Piecing together all the clues, a scenario takes shape.
A person was standing outside and says it was an envelope for Dean Milo. When he came down, he opened up the door. The person had the gun and forced him inside, laid him down, and shot him with one shot.
Went into the living room, got the cushion, came back and did the second shot. Put this all together, and it was what I call a professional hit.
The murder theory is established. Now to see what skeletons are hiding in the Milo closet.
When detectives go up the stairs to the master bedroom, they are astounded. On Maggie's side of the bed, she has her Bible and has a lot of religious magazines. And on Dean's side of the bed, he has his pornographic magazines. It's almost like two different split personalities.
Strange bedfellows indeed. Clearly, the worshipping wife and her hot-blooded husband did not see eye to eye on everything.
Quite a contrast there. It makes you wonder about what was happening in that marriage and what was happening with Maggie dealing with Dean's lifestyle.
The nudie mags seem almost quaint compared to what Dean's got stashed in his closet.
There they find a box. What's in it? 4 pornographic videos. The first 3 are straight sex, but the last one is gay sex.
It seems unlikely Dean's pious wife, Maggie, was getting her kicks to gay porn. So investigators have to wonder, what's really going on here?
Outwardly, Dean was very much this handsome, successful married businessman. So for anybody to find out that he may have been somehow interested in gay-oriented pornography would have been shocking.
We didn't know whether or not this was a gay thing. We didn't know whether or not there was a lover here.
But a discovery in Maggie Milo's nightstand suggests the new widow had a possible motive.
Investigators also find a note that Dean had written Maggie, and probably at a very angry moment in his life, because he was telling her that he didn't really think that she appreciated all the things that he had done for her.
Dean's letter reads like a list of grievances.
She wanted a diamond. I bought her a diamond. Then she wanted a big one. I bought her a house. She wanted a better one. There was a problem there.
Might Maggie have felt betrayed enough to kill? Up next, the victim's absent wife returns to Bath Township and stirs up a whole new set of questions. Detectives investigating the murder of business tycoon Dean Milo now believe the victim's secrets hold the key to his execution-style murder. The CEO's cache of hardcore movies and gay porn has detectives quite interested in what his religious wife Maggie has to say.
In any homicide investigation, you always look at the spouse first.
Maggie, if in fact she knew something about his private life and his private affairs that could have enraged her to that standpoint.
But could she have pulled the trigger?
She had an alibi. Maggie Milo was down in Florida. Her family was all there, her mother, father, and her relatives.
Nevertheless, she certainly had the means, being the wealthy person that she is, to hire someone to do the deed.
You know, I'm over these irrational questions.
So what about that gay porn in the couple's closet? Maggie has a simple explanation.
She says the guy who works for Dean at the company bought the film and asked Dean if you can hold this for me. So Dean brought it home, told Maggie about the film, and they put it in their closet.
Bit of a stretch. But without direct evidence tying Maggie to the crime, detectives cut her loose. For now.
You can call my lawyer.
Meantime, police talk to the next Milo family members on their list. Dean's sister, Sophie, and her husband, Lonnie.
Right off the bat, Sophie and Lonnie hire lawyers.
They wouldn't talk to us. They got their attorneys. The attorney says that they're not talking. Lonnie and Sophie, they weren't that upset about Dean being murdered. So we kind of wondered about that.
As with wife Maggie, Sophie and her husband Lonnie were reportedly out of town on the night of the murder.
Sophie had told the next door neighbor they were going out of town for the weekend and offered them the use of their swimming pool. When we interviewed the neighbor, they were never offered the use of that swimming pool before. That was a real red flag for me.
More certain than ever, the murderer will be found inside the Milo family. Investigators make the 3-minute walk over to the estate of Dean's brother, Fred.
Fred has an alibi. He was out of town. It was a verifiable alibi.
Fred denied knowing anything about the crime, had no idea who would be involved in trying to kill his brother. He said very little. It was just, I hope you guys find out who did the killing.
With hardly any sibling cooperation and even fewer good leads, the case drags on. Until the Milo Corporation announces a $50,000 reward for any information on the murder of its CEO. It doesn't take long for tips to start rolling in, and one is especially intriguing. An informant tells detectives to look into a woman named Terry Lee King.
Terry Lee King, she was a stripper. In fact, the Akron Beacon Journal wrote a story about her, how good she was, and she's very attractive.
As far as strippers go, Terry Lee King became quite successful.
You looked at all that, you wonder, well, what part does this play in the Milo murder?
According to the tipster, in the weeks leading to the attack on Dean Milo, the stripper was canvassing Akron, Ohio's hotspots with a very disturbing proposition.
The informant says she was going around town asking people if they'd like to polish off a rich guy for $5 to $10 grand.
Terry Lee King had an envelope, and the envelope contained pictures of what Dean looked like and where Dean was going to be on certain days.
And Terry Lee King wasn't trawling for hitmen alone. She was with a guy named Barry Boyd.
Barry Boyd was an attorney. He wasn't an overly successful attorney, but I think he was making a living at being an attorney.
Terry Lee King had known Barry. He'd represented her, I believe, on more than one occasion.
She makes contact with a lot of unsavory people. She could find someone in her circle of influence who might be willing to do this for a sum of money.
But why would Terry and Barry want to bankroll Dean Milo's murder? Time to take a closer look at this shady lawyer.
Investigators stake out Barry Boyd's house. They want to see if he has any connection to the Milo family.
Now, I had occasion to go up to the garage of Barry Boyd's and look through kind of a small opening and found a Jaguar inside. I was able to get the tag number.
And when investigators run the number, they turn up the strangest thing.
We found that the vehicle belonged to Lonnie Curtis. What a surprise.
Lonnie Curtis, the dead man's brother-in-law.
What a revelation. Lo and behold, here's Barry Boyd going around town looking for a hitman to polish off Dean. And Dean's brother-in-law, Lonnie's fancy luxury sports car is parked in Barry Boyd's garage. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fall into place. Now you have your connection to the Milo family.
But which family members are responsible? Could brother-in-law Lonnie and sister Sophie have killed Dean in order to take back the company? Did underachieving Fred finally decide to step out from under Dean's shadow? Or did the thought of a secretly gay husband convince wife Maggie to do him in?
So now we have all these different possible motives for wanting Dean dead. Moving up the corporate ladder, respect, betrayal. It's going to be very difficult to solve.
Coming up, the drama ramps up as cops discover Lonnie's not the only family member with dirty connections. Two months after the murder of Akron multimillionaire Dean Milo, investigators are stunned to learn Dean's own brother-in-law, Lonnie, has a connection to the pair believed to have set up the killing. To find out just how deep this connection runs, police haul in suspected conspirators, Terry Lee King and Barry Boyd.
Barry Boyd denies any involvement in Dean's murder. When investigators question Barry Boyd about that luxury car, he says, "No big deal. I do legal work for Lonnie, and he loaned me the car as a favor. That's why it's parked in my garage."
And wouldn't you know, Boyd has another tie to the Milo family.
Barry Boyd, it turned out, had gone to school with Fred Milo. Fred and him had been friends.
So many uncanny connections. And yet, Boyd still insists he had nothing to do with arranging Dean Milo's murder. One interrogation room over, the stripper also refuses to reveal a thing.
Terry Lee King, she wouldn't tell you anything. I mean, there was like 3 of us that worked on her, and she wasn't going to budge.
Terry was a smart young lady. She's a party girl. She was hot. I watched through the window, and she would just stare at you and stare at you. And I realized that once the person who was asking the questions blinked their eyes, she knew she had you.
Detectives are sure the stripper and the lawyer are at the heart of the murder plot. But they're nowhere without a confession. So they take drastic action.
The investigators end up arresting Terry Lee King because they think that she knows more than she's telling, to try to coerce her testimony.
The gamble pays off.
Terry Lee King finally admits that yes, she and Barry Boyd did indeed hire a hitman to kill Dean Milo.
Confronted with Terry Lee's confession, Boyd cracks too, and finally reveals which Milo family member masterminded this twisted murder conspiracy.
Barry Boyd finally admits that Fred Milo approached him about putting a hit on his brother, Dean.
Fred had been mistreated, he had been slighted, he had been embarrassed, and he could only take so much, and he felt that retaliation was to kill his brother.
So he had Boyd hire a hitman for him. One small-time thug finally agreed to do the job. At long last, Bath Township investigators learned the truth of what went down on that awful August evening.
Around 1 a.m., Dean Milo was awakened. And he quickly got out of bed, maybe perhaps putting his boxers on backwards. We don't really know that. Went downstairs and noticed a messenger at the front door with an envelope.
Dean had absolutely no idea who was at the door other than a messenger, and made the comment, message from your family.
Once he opened the door, and that's when he pointed the gun.
The hitman's pistol was outfitted with a homemade silencer, a metal pipe stuffed with cotton gauze. He used it to shoot Dean in the back of the head.
When he shot him, the metal came off and the cotton flew out.
But Dean was still breathing.
He told us that he wasn't sure that Dean was dead. He came back with the cushion, laid it on top of Dean's head. That was the fatal blow.
The shooter collected his broken silencer and fled, leaving Dean to bleed out on the hardwood floor. Fred Milo is arrested and charged with conspiring to kill his big brother. He's ultimately found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Though brother-in-law Lonnie lent his car to conspirator Barry Boyd, neither he nor wife Sophie was implicated in the murder plot. Dean's wife Maggie had absolutely no involvement. With Dean dead and Fred behind bars, the surviving Milos ultimately opt to sell the family business.
Dean was the man with the charisma, the ambition, and the fortitude to make things grow and to do what needed to be done, where Lonnie and Sophie were not.
Dean was a great mastermind at running the business. They should have just left it to him and collected their paychecks. But no, Fred got greedy, and ultimately, Fred's plan, just to do away with Dean altogether, that backfired too. And in the end, he was left with nothing.
Today, the Bath Township is peaceful again. But no one will ever forget the glamorous life of Dean Milo or his scandalous death.